Welcome everyone to the Preparing for a Civil Service Exam webinar. This is a presentation of the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training. My name is Jess Rossman and I'll be your host for the webinar, and our facilitator today will be Alana Osterman. We also are lucky to have Matt Gariepi from the Career Mobility Office. These two folks are really knowledgeable about these things, so they're here to answer some of your questions and to present some content. So I first just want to make sure that everyone is muted and that you've all logged in with your full first and last name. That helps us to take attendance and make sure that you get credit for attending today. And we are looking good in that regard, so I'll just reach out to anybody that needs that special reminder later on. So you're all muted, but you are free to use the chat box at any time. That's located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. I see a few of you have filtered in where you're calling in from today. You can continue to do so just so we have that. And then the other way you'll be able to interact with us today is using the raise hand button. That's located at the bottom of your screen next to the smiley face or reactions button. And just so I know everybody knows where it is, can you go ahead and click that raise hand button for me? I'll do it too. And you can see a hand go up next to your name in the participants panel. So we're going to use that for some activities, but you can also click that to let me know if you have a question, and I can either unmute you or you can just type your question into the chat box as we go through. Put the hand down, click the same button, you'll see it go away. And wonderful. And then the last thing I'll say is that this and all of the webinars that we do here at the partnership is recorded. So there's already a recording available on our YouTube page on our website, but then you can also view this recording. It usually is updated within about a month after. Okay. As I mentioned previously, today's webinar is sponsored by the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training, or as many people refer to us, just the partnership. And for those of you who maybe this is your first webinar, you're not as familiar with us, the partnership is an organization that administers education and training programs for CSEA represented employees through labor management cooperation. It's funded through negotiated agreements between New York State and CSEA. The partnership offers in-person classroom training, online learning, educational advisement services, grants, tuition benefits, labor management services, and other education and training programs, including the webinar you're attending today. So the partnership is a joint labor management organization whose mission is to promote career mobility, improve job skills, support workplace safety and health, and promote effective labor management relations. You can learn more about us on our website or by calling us directly, and I will, of course, be providing this contact information again and more at the end of today's webinar. So now that we all know a little bit more about the partnership and a little bit more about each of you, let's get started with the webinar. I'm going to turn it over to your instructor, Alana.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Preparing for a Civil Service Exam. My name is Alana Osterman, and I'm also here with Matthew Gariepi to present this webinar for you today. We both work in the Career Mobility Office within the Department of Civil Service. The Department of Civil Service is the central personnel agency for New York State, and our mission is to work with agencies to ensure that they have the right people for the right jobs at the right time. Let's discuss why we're here. During this webinar, we're going to explore the steps.
Oh, whoops, looks like we lost Alana, and perhaps she'll be rejoining us in just a moment. Let's take a quick intermission here.
Five, 1, 8, 9, 0, 2.
Okay, so technical difficulties, that's okay. I'm going to unmute Alana in a second to see if that worked, but usually when we get that voicemail message, looks like she usually has to call back in. Let's see here. Alana, can you hear me? Nope, okay, let's try that again. So folks, I'm going to read the rest of the webinar objectives. That way when Alana comes back, she can move to the next slide. So during this webinar, we're going to be exploring the examination process, describing strategies for answering multiple choice questions, and identifying what happens on the day of the test and reviewing the scoring, canvassing, and hiring process. That way she just can pick up right here when she's ready. And in the meantime, if you folks have any questions about civil service exams, you can type them. Oh, there's Alana.
I am so sorry. I don't know what happened.
That is okay. Technical difficulties happen, and I finished the objectives for you. So we can move to the next slide, which I think is our first question for everyone.
Okay. So fact or myth? This question is, are the majority of positions in state government filled through the examination process?
All right, so I want you all to head to the chat and let us know yes or no. Is this a true or false, I should say. Is this true or false, this statement on the screen? And then also, I did see a question pop in. I will return to that. Don't worry. Megan, I see that, and I will come back to it. Okay, so everyone, though, Alana is saying that this is a true statement.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Yes, this is a fact. Approximately 80% of state jobs are filled by individuals who have taken tests. These positions are called competitive because you compete for them by taking an examination. There are other types of positions that don't require a written exam, but do require that specific qualifications are met to be eligible for the position. These positions are generally filled by people with professional licenses, trade skills, or other specific qualifications. However, this webinar focuses on how to prepare for a civil service exam. To help you understand how to prepare for an exam, I'd like to introduce you to Carlos. Carlos is a Taxpayer Services Representative 1 right now and is interested in taking an exam to be promoted to a Taxpayer Services Representative 2. We'll follow Carlos as he navigates the examination process, prepares for his test, and finally sees what happens after he takes the test. First, let's look at the examination process. There are 3 parts to the examination process. Before Carlos can take the exam, he needs to find out when it is being held by viewing the exam announcement. Next, he'll need to apply and qualify for it. Only then can he take the exam. The first step is to view the exam announcement. All exam announcements can be found on the Department of Civil Service website at www.cs.ny.gov. You can also view a tentative exam schedule on the department's website too. It's always a good idea to print out a copy of the exam announcement to use as a resource when you apply and as you prepare for the test. If you want to be notified by email when exams are announced, you can sign up for that on the website address shown here. Once you sign up, you'll receive an email to confirm your subscription. Okay, so Carlos has found the exam announcement for the Taxpayer Services Representative 2 title. Exam announcements contain all of the information you'll need to apply. This includes the title and salary information, the exam date, the application deadline, and the minimum qualifications to take the test, the duties of the position, and the type of exam. It's important to read through the minimum qualifications on the exam announcement. If you feel that you meet them, then apply by the deadline. Late applications will not be considered. When you apply, you'll also need to pay a non-refundable processing fee, which is listed on the exam announcement. Fee waiver information is also noted on the application. At this time, there are no exam fees. They have been waived until December of 2025. So Carlos fills out the application, submits it before the deadline, and pays the processing fee. What happens next? After you submit your application, the Department of Civil Service will review your qualifications. If your application is approved, you will receive an admission notice telling you when and where to take the test. If your application is disapproved, Civil Service will let you know why and how you can provide additional information. You are responsible for providing enough information on the application to show that you meet the minimum qualifications listed on the exam announcement. An incomplete application could be a missed job opportunity. Next, Carlos received his admission notice notifying him of the location and time of the test. The admission notice also allows him to take the exam once he gets to the site. Therefore, he should always bring your admission notice to the exam. If you have other questions about the exam application process, please see the FAQs handout that comes with this course.
And if you haven't viewed or printed the handouts for this course yet, you can always do that after the webinar ends. You would have received these handouts about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they would have been sent as attachments to the email you received telling you were accepted. So take a peek at that and look at them later. Back to you, Alana.
Thanks, Jessica. Now that you've gone through the examination process, I have a question for you. The question is, why should you read an exam announcement carefully? A, it includes sample questions from past exams. B, it includes important information to help determine your eligibility to take the exam. C, it includes the names of individuals that are currently serving in the title. Or D, all of the above.
I'd like everyone to notice I've opened the polling panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So take your mouse and select the circle next to the option that you think is the correct answer. And then when you're done, click on Submit. And I'm just going to give everybody a little bit of time with this. We'll be using this tool throughout as well. Give everybody a chance to respond that wants to. Okay. And I can't close the poll while there's people doing it. There we go. All right, so it looks like the most popular answer was B, and then just a 1 vote for D, all of the above.
Okay. The answer is B. The exam announcement includes important information to help determine your eligibility to take the exam. Remember, it's your responsibility to show how your education or experience meets the title's minimum qualifications. Nowhere on the exam announcement are there sample exam questions, nor is there a list of people that are currently in the position. So answers A, C, and D are incorrect. Now we're going to talk about how to prepare for the test. For the remainder of this webinar, we'll be giving you some general tips to help you prepare for a written multiple choice test. Some of these tips may help you prepare for other types of tests as well. Now that Carlos has his admission notice, he's thinking about how to prepare for the test, but he's not sure where to start. Let's walk through some information and tips that can help with any written multiple choice test regardless of the subject. As I said earlier, one of the first ways Carlos can prepare for the test is to look at the exam announcement. The exam announcement for written multiple choice exams will include a description of the subject areas that will be tested. This is called the subject of examination. You'll see that each subject has a description of what will be covered. Keep in mind, topics are chosen based on the test you were taken, so you may see different topics on your exam than the ones that are shown here. Let's look at the question for the topic, operations with letters and numbers. As you can see, questions on this topic test for the ability to alphabetize, compare, check, and count groups of letters and/or numbers. Again, you may not be tested on this topic, but reviewing a sample question will still give you an idea of how test questions are worded and how to respond to them. So here's a sample question. In the following list of numbers, how many times does 8 come just after 6 when 6 comes just after an odd number? We'll give you a few moments to review the question.
And when you're ready to answer, please click on the circle next to the option A, B, C, or D that you feel is the right answer, and then click Submit in that polling panel. If that polling panel didn't open for you, okay, I can see some people doing that, but if it doesn't open for you, you can always type your answer into the chat box. And I'm aiming to get as many people that responded as did last time, so we're about halfway there, just a few more. All right, as we go through, folks get a little faster at these anyway, so let's take a look at the results. Looks like C4 was the most popular answer, followed by D5.
Okay, good job, guys. The answer is C. Let's go over how we came up with the answer. To answer this question correctly, you must read the list of numbers from left to right. First, you'll need to find each 8 that comes just after 6 in the list of numbers. Next, find any of the 6-8 pairs where the 6 comes just after an odd number and count how many times this happens. So in this problem, there are 4 times where 8 comes just after 6 and the 6 comes just after an odd number. So Jessica has highlighted these for us. Does anyone have any questions before we move on?
And if you do have a question, and I've got a one already in the wings for you, please type it in the chat box or click on that raise hand button to let me know. Okay, so a question from Megan earlier on is, are there any, or let me get the question ready, when will some clerical exams be coming up? Do we know that? Is that knowable, Matt or Alana?
I mean, I know that we had like a period to where people could like request the exams, and I think it's still just going through the process to get our tentative schedule. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, so in general, when the exam planning process occurs, we kind of get together with HR directors and, staffing directors, and staffing management, I suppose I should say, and basically slate away these times for a plethora of exams. So it's, obviously, as you guys know, it's not just clerical. You also have professional titles. You have, all sorts of different occupational areas. It's a long-winded way of me saying we set up these dates pretty far in advance each year. So, for example, we're planning out for exams like upwards to January, February next year and beyond and such. So when we do have those slated away, those tend to go on our tentative exam announcement schedule, which you can find on our website, and we can kind of direct you there at the end of the presentation. What I really recommend is that you folks Google New York State Civil Service email notification. And the first link there should bring you to a page where you can, it's either a page to a page or to the page exactly where you can put in your email address. You can put in your work and your personal. And what will happen is a message will be sent to you directly when an announcement occurs. It'll be for open competitive, promotion, all of it, since these exams kind of are released in these exam announcements are all released in batches. So whenever a new batch comes out, you get an email right to you, says, hey, here's the new ones that are out. So, you're looking for an office assistant, exam, you're looking for program aide, you're looking for administrative assistant. If that comes out and you're on that email notification list, it goes right to you. And you can click on the hyperlink, it'll take you right there. So that's what I would personally recommend. But in terms of are there any coming out, I'd have to direct you right to the tentative exam announcement scheduler, because that's where we would, potentially also look as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And good question, Megan. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions to that, and anyone else in the webinar right now, too. You feel free to type your questions in the chat at any time, and I'll bring those up to Matt and Alana. But I don't see, and I see, Megan, your hand is up, but I'm going to go ahead and just lower it if that doesn't answer your question or you have follow-ups, please type it in the chat. But I don't see any other questions at this time, so I'm going to move to the next slide.
Okay, just quickly, I'd like to add, if you're interested in seeing this or other sample questions, you can view the How to Take a Written Test guide, and you'll see additional sample questions referenced there. Now we can move on to some other strategies. So as I said earlier, one of the first, wrong page, my bad. So multiple choice questions in a civil service exam are a question or incomplete statement followed by 4 possible answers. Your score on the multiple choice test is going to be based on the total number of questions you answer correctly. Therefore, it's to your advantage to answer every question, even if you aren't sure which is the right answer. Be careful to choose only one answer per question, though. If you choose more than one, that question will be counted as incorrect. The best way is to start by reading the entire question carefully and then try to answer it without looking at your answer choices. If you read the question too quickly and glance at the answers, you may choose the wrong answer. It's best to make sure you understand the question fully before attempting to answer it. Next, you should look for any keywords in the question that will help you choose the right answer. Some of the common keywords are many, most, best, first, last, and except. This is very important because one word can completely change the meaning of the question, or it can change which answer would be right. For example, suppose a question contained an explanation of a situation and then asked for which answer was not true for the situation. If you did not read the question carefully or pay attention to the keyword, you might choose the answer that is true for the situation rather than the one that's not true. After you've read the question and checked for keywords, you should look at the individual answers. You'll need to select the one choice that best answers the question or best completes the statement. If you use the strategies we discussed, you should be in a good position to choose the best answer. If you can't think of the answer right away, you should use the process of elimination. By that, we mean you should eliminate or ignore any obvious wrong answer. That will help you narrow down the remaining choices. If you can eliminate one or more of the choices, your chances for success are better than if you made a completely wild guess. So let's try out the process of elimination. You may not know much about this topic, but let's answer it using this strategy. Here's the question. Of the following, which one provides the most vitamin C in a 1-cup serving? A, grapefruit juice, B, sliced peaches, C, mashed potatoes, or D, chopped broccoli? Does anyone see an answer that we can eliminate? If you do, please type it in the chat.
This one's a little bit deceiving. It looks like a poll, but we're actually asking you which of these can you eliminate right off the top. So type that letter answer into the chat box for us. And let's see. All right, I'm seeing mostly C's, 1 D, and a couple of people are saying, you know, they think that A, kind of a process of elimination here. Some people are pretty confident that A is the right answer. Okay, yeah, consensus here for the most part. C is the most popular answer.
The question again is which option provides the most vitamin C in a 1-cup serving? You should notice that the key word in this question is most. I think all of the foods mentioned in the choices contain some vitamin C, but let's narrow down our choices. Several of you have mentioned you can probably eliminate mashed potatoes, so we're going to ignore option C. Many people know that citrus fruits like lemons and grapefruit are a good source of vitamin C. That makes choice A look like a good guess. and you might pick that one. As it turns out, broccoli actually contains more vitamin C than one cup of grapefruit juice. So D is the best answer. The process of elimination helps if you need to guess, but it doesn't replace actual knowledge of the topic. Likewise, don't be influenced by the length of the answer choices. The longest answer is not necessarily the correct one. You also shouldn't choose an answer just because it includes language that sounds technical. Answers that use technical terms may be included to see if the person knows the difference between what looks right and what is right. Finally, you should determine the best answer using only the information supplied in the question without making any other assumptions. This is another reason it is so important to read the question first by itself so you're not influenced by the answers. Be mindful that the correct answer is the one that works best for the situation described. Let's look at another sample question to practice these strategies. Again, you might not know anything about this topic, and we understand that. So here's the question. If an alarm goes off in a mechanical room and the situation appears to be a threat to health or safety, what should you do first? A, turn off the power. B, call your supervisor. C, call the security staff. Or D, have the people leave the area.
All right, I've opened that polling panel again, so select the answer that you think you should be taking, the action you should be taking first, and then when you're done, click submit. And we're about halfway there. Give you guys a few more seconds. All right, now we're about where we were last time. So I'm going to close the poll. Let's take a look. And Alana, it looks like the most popular answer is D, have people leave the area, followed by B, call your supervisor.
Okay. So this question asks what you should do first if an alarm goes off in a mechanical room. So we notice that the key word in this question is first. When a question uses the word first, you should consider the choices in the order in which they should be done. Next, we read the possible answer choices carefully. Another strategy to keep in mind is that you should use the information provided in the question to choose your answer. Do not make any assumptions about what else may be happening in this situation. In this case, all four answers list actions that should be taken. The important thing to know is what to do first in this situation. There's no information given about why the alarm went off, but it does say that the situation appears to be a threat to health or safety. Therefore, the situation could be life-threatening or result in injury. Based on this, we should use the process of elimination to decide that the first thing to do is to have the employees leave the area. This allows people to remain safe while the reason for the alarm is determined and the situation is fixed. So choice D is the first thing to do. If the situation were not life-threatening, choice A, turning off the power, might be the first thing to do. Let's see how much you remember. Which of the following strategies is most likely to help you select the best answer? A, scan the answers, then read the question. B, use the process of elimination. C, check any technical language first. Or D, choose the longest answer.
All right, another poll. So the same deal as last time. Tell us which of these you think is the best strategy, and then click submit. And every time I do one of these, you guys get faster and faster, but I don't want to rush anybody. You have plenty of time. I'm going to give the last couple of people a moment. All right. This time, it looks like the most popular answer is B, use the process of elimination, and just a few votes for C, check for any technical language.
Good job, guys. The answer is B, use the process of elimination. By the way, did any of you use the process of elimination to answer this question? Extra points if you did. As a reminder, we recommend reading the question first and try to answer it in your mind, then read the answers provided. Also, we've said you shouldn't just look for the longest answer or the one with technical language in it. So the day of the test has arrived and Carlos is feeling a little nervous. It's okay to be nervous. The exam represents a potential job. It can help to know what to bring and to understand what will happen on the day of the exam to feel a little less nervous. Before we go on, I want to know what you think Carlos should bring to the test. We've given you a little hint on the slide.
All right, yep, use that chat box. I see some of you have already started to let us know what can you bring to the test. And right off the top, we've got folks saying pencils, state IDs, erasers. Let's see, a calculator. Yeah, that seems to be the general consensus here. Admission notice.
Yes. So all of these are great ideas. Some of you really hit the mark. Let's take a closer look at what to bring and what not to bring and see how well you did. So on the day of the exam, Carlos is bringing the following: his admission notice, a photo ID that contains his signature, 2 number 2 pencils, and a solar or battery-powered calculator. The admission notice acts as Carlos's ticket into the exam, and he'll need to present it at the test site. The photo ID with signature proves his identity. The number 2 pencils are for filling out the test booklet, and the calculator and other items are specified as needed on the admission notice. Please note you won't be allowed to use your cell phone as a calculator. The admission notice will also mention any items that you can bring with you, such as a quiet snack or a drink. Now let's look at some things that Carlos or any other candidate cannot bring to the test site. Carlos should not bring electronic or other communication devices to the test site. If he has his cell phone with him, it needs to be turned off, and it should be put away in his pocket and not taken out at any time during the exam. In addition, Carlos should not bring books, reference materials, this presentation, or any other guides or sample test materials to the testing site. Using these electronic devices or reference materials may result in disqualification. The most important thing to figure out is where you're going, and then give yourself enough time to get there and find parking. Carlos plans to arrive early so he can park and find his test room. Since Carlos expects to be at the test site for a couple hours, he should also dress comfortably and in layers so he can adjust to the temperature conditions there. As we mentioned earlier, it's important to bring your admission notice and any items mentioned by it. Finally, be aware that candidates cannot leave the room for the first half hour of the test, so make sure you have what you need before the start of the exam. If you have an emergency before or on the test date and you aren't able to make it, you should call the Department of Civil Service at one of the numbers above. If you aren't able to make it to your exam, there may be an opportunity for you to be given a separate test date. However, in order for that to happen, you need to call Civil Service as soon as possible on the day of the test. Now we're going to talk about what happens when you arrive. Test monitors will be there to oversee the test and candidates to keep track of time. A test monitor will greet you when you get to the test site and walk you to your exam room, and they'll stay in the room with you as the test is administered. Monitors will also give instructions on how to complete the test. They are able to answer general questions only and won't be able to help you understand specific test questions. Okay, so we have another fact or myth question for you. Can Carlos ask the monitors at the test site to help him understand a specific test question?
Use the chat box and let us know, is this fact or myth? I'm seeing a lot of myth and emphatic no from a few people. Yeah, they seem to be in agreement that this is not.
All right, you guys are on top of it today. The answer is no. Monitors provide instruction and direction throughout the exam process. They're not able to assist Carlos in understanding any of the test questions. It's going to be up to him to make a decision. If he uses some of the tips and strategies we mentioned earlier, he's going to make his best decision. Now, we're going to look more closely at what's included in the candidate's directions. So when you arrive, there will be several papers on the desk. The first one called Candidate Directions. These directions are designed to help candidates understand how to take the test. The test monitor will read through their own set of directions at the beginning of the exam and will allow time for everyone to read their candidate directions. Make sure that you read these carefully to understand how to complete the test. This is the important step. One of the other things that the candidate directions will tell Carlos is which test booklet he will need to have, which questions he must answer, and the answer sheets he must use. This is done through something called the test plan. Carlos may be asked to answer questions from more than one test booklet, but he may not have to answer all the questions in each book. There will also be an answer sheet for each of the test booklets he receives and scratch paper. As I said a moment ago, the candidate directions will show the test plan Carlos will need to use for the exam he is taking. Carlos will use the test plan to find out which test booklets he needs and which test questions he should answer in a booklet. The monitor is not permitted to help Carlos with this, so he should take his time to read through the information. On your screen, you'll see what a test plan chart looks like. If Carlos was taking the Services Representative 3 exam, he would start by finding the exam number and the title in the exam list shown on your screen. From this, he can see that he will use Test Plan 3. And Jessica has highlighted that in red for you to see. Next, Carlos will use the test plan chart to find Test Plan 3. If you find Test Plan 3 on the chart and move across, you'll see the test questions that he will have to complete. We've circled these in red for you. For this exam, we can see that Carlos will be using all 3 exam booklets. However, he will only be completing the questions that are circled in red. For example, on test booklet 888A, Carlos will only need to answer questions 31 through 45. He does not need to answer questions 1 through 30. When Carlos answers questions 31 through 45, he needs to be sure that he marks his answer sheet starting with number 31 too. Does anyone have any questions about this?
As always, if you do have a question, feel free to type it in the chat box or click on that raise hand button to let us know. And I don't have any questions in the chat and no raised hands now, but I do have one question I'm holding for the end. So
Okay.
move on.
All right. So this time, let's say that Carlos wants to take the services representative to exam. Using this test plan chart, I'd like you to figure out how many test booklets he would use if he was taking the services representative to exam.
Use the chat box to let us know how many test booklets Carlos needs to use. All right, you guys are pretty quick. I'm seeing 2s across the board, Alana.
I'm gonna say these are some quick answers because this is like the hardest part. But you guys are correct. The answer is 2 test booklets. We know from the examination list at the bottom of the screen that the services representative to exam will be using test plan 2. Next, you would find test plan number 2 on the test plan chart. If you look across at the test booklet columns, you'll see that test booklet 888A and test booklet 889A are the only ones with X's in them. Carlos will also be given a separate scannable answer sheet for each of the test booklets he uses. An example of an answer sheet is shown on the screen. When marking his answer, Carlos should be sure the number and the letter of the answer he puts on the answer sheet matches the answer he selected in the test booklet. So if he skips a question, he will need to remember to skip it on the answer sheet too. Otherwise, all of the answers after the one he skipped will be wrong. Excuse me. Finally, Carlos should make sure that each of his answer sheets are filled out completely using a number 2 pencil. Where on the sample answer sheet can we find the test booklet Carlos is using now?
All right, I opened that polling panel a little early, so apologies to anyone who participated before the question was asked. But let's see, so we are looking for the place where we can see the test booklet number, and you're gonna just select A, B, or C in the polling panel and then press submit. And if you entered in a wrong answer or not the answer, you can just type that in the chat. Okay, we are just about where we need to be, so I'm going to close the poll. And the most popular answer was B.
Great. As you notice, this area is shown on the left-hand side of the answer sheet, so that is area B. Carlos will also need to provide his Social Security identification number, the exam numbers, and the titles he is taking, and the time he began the test, which the monitor will provide on his sheet. When he's finished with the exam, the monitor will tell him what time to put as his time ended. Does anyone have any questions about what will happen on the day of the exam?
And if you do have a question, type it in the chat or click on that raise hand button. But I do have a question from Lauren. Would you be penalized for answering more questions than needed?
I don't believe so. I believe it just goes strictly off of your test plan.
Yes, that's accurate. You know, it's one of those situations where, you know, you're running. The answer is no, you won't be penalized, but obviously we have to just obviously reiterate to be careful because, you know, if you're going to start answering stuff that's not in the test plan, you know, that's when you wonder, were there other mistakes? So just make sure you're answering just the questions that are needed and such. But no, if there's 60 questions and you answer 61, that 61 question, if you get that wrong or something, that's not going to penalize your actual score, because they're only going to count the 60 questions.
Okay, Lauren, hopefully that answers your question. That's new to me. That's good to know. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. We're nearing the end of the webinar and our question and answer period is coming up. So I may hold them until then, but I think that looks good. I don't see any questions now, Alana, so I'll move you to the next slide.
Okay. So now that Carlos has taken his exam, his next question is probably, when will I receive my score? Generally, you will get your score about 3 months after you take the exam. A passing score is 70. If you pass the exam, you will be placed on an eligible list, which is what agencies can use when filling jobs. To understand civil service terms like eligible list, please see the FAQ and glossary of terms in your handouts. Most likely, you will receive a notification by email explaining how to view your score on the Eligible List Management System, or ELMS Online. We have included a link to ELMS Online on your screen. It is important for you to keep your email address, phone number, and mailing address up to date so you get this notification. You can update this information in your ELMS Online account. So let's revisit Carlos. 3 months after the exam, he checks his email and finds a notification from ELMS Online. He sees that he scored an 85 on the exam and has been placed on the eligible list. This is great news. He hopes to hear from an agency before the eligible list expires. Speaking of that, it's important to remember that civil service does not notify candidates when the eligible list is expiring, and your score on the list will not be moved over to the new list. So if you did not receive a job from that first list, you'll need to take the exam again. That's another reason why those email notifications that we talked about earlier are really important to sign up for. That way you'll be notified when the next test is held and can apply. Once the eligible list is established, agencies contact eligible list candidates to see who's interested in the position. This is usually done with something called a canvas letter. The top of the canvas letter will say of the availability for employment in a position in New York State government. And that's just what it is, a letter to gauge interest and availability in the job and its location. It's not a job offer. The canvas will give you information about the particular position, such as the name of the hiring agency, the title and salary of the position, the location, and other information including the date the canvas letter must be returned. Agencies may notify candidates through email of canvas letters available in ELMS Online. That's another reason why it's important for candidates to keep their contact information up to date by logging into their ELMS Online account. After canvassing the list, the agency moves on to the interviewing and hiring the best candidate for the job. If you have questions after receiving a canvas letter, you can visit the FAQs on the Civil Service website. Candidates can also call the hiring agency about the hiring process and salary questions. For your reference, we have included the link to the state telephone directory here. We've also included the link to the Civil Service FAQs and Civil Services contact information. So how is Carlos doing? About 6 months after the exam, Carlos receives a canvas letter from an agency. Once he's satisfied that he understands everything fully, he returns the canvas letter before the deadline. Okay, so let's see if you were paying attention. Is this statement true or false? Exam scores are typically sent out 1 month after the exam date.
All right, check that chat box and let us know what you think. You might have seen me type in an answer to a participant that will influence your decision here, but I think you all had it already. So this is myth, this is not true, is what they're saying, Alana.
And you guys are correct, this is false. Scores are normally sent out 3 months after the exam date. Okay, well, I hope you find this webinar helpful. If you have any additional questions regarding this webinar and the test-taking process, please contact the Department of Civil Service. In addition, the Department of Civil Service's Career Mobility Office offers other helpful webinars on civil service topics. You can access these webinars on the training page of the Career Mobility Office website. A link to the Career Mobility website is provided at the bottom of your screen.